Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things, which gratefully at long last finally includes a conversation. We'll get to that in a moment. A few quick Lent-related announcements. I hope you're planning to join us, or that you will plan to join us for our Sister Thea Bowman pilgrimage coming up on March 30th. We'll be going by bus to La Crosse to tour the chapel where she prayed, Maria Angelorum Chapel at St. Rose Convent. We'll have dinner with friends of Sister Thea, and then we'll see Valimar Jansen's remarkable one-woman presentation. There is sign-up information in the Quick Things email. So please join us for what promises to be a great Lenten outing. Stations of the Cross are prayed at 6:30 on Thursdays during Lent. Reconciliation is offered from 5 to 6 on Wednesday and 9 a.m. on Saturday. And a reminder that in addition to our morning masses, at 8:15 Wednesday and 7 a.m. Thursday and Friday, we have an evening mass during Lent at 5:30 p.m. And then also to get on your radar screen, on Wednesday, March 15th, the people at First English Lutheran have invited us to join them for what they have as a Lenten series of preaching on the book of Jonah. We'll be hearing the story of Jonah and the big fish and Nineveh as we gather on Wednesday, March 15th at 6 o'clock. And then they'll join us for Stations of the Cross and a reception on Thursday, March 23rd. So I'm happy to welcome to our conversation Kathy Buckley. Kathy is the director of CATS, an acronym for Keeping Area Teens Safe. And Kathy, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us, first of all, so we've become familiar with CATS a little bit at St. Andrews,
right.
But we're in the middle of our second collection for CATS. But tell us what CATS is. Introduce us to the program.
Okay. CATS, Keep Area Teens Safe, is a nonprofit donation and grant-based facility here in the Wausau community. We serve runaway and homeless youth as a bridge to services for kids in unstable situations. We also work with youth that have been trafficked or are in crisis in their home at the current time. We provide safe and secure housing, meals, case management, connection with mentorship, academic support, and using community resources for the youth. So once they are and ready, are leading our program, that they have the resources available to them and know where to find those resources to sustain some of the skills, sustain the structure we've worked with them on.
That is a large offering of services.
It is.
And how many kids, and it's a residential facility, correct?
It is.
How many kids are with you at a given time? What's your maximum?
We can serve 8 youth at a time per our license. And right now our census is staying pretty close to that. So we usually do have pretty close to a full household.
Sure. You know, I've talked about this at Mass. I've said that, this is a program that we wish didn't have to exist.
That's right.
But it does. Talk about that. I mean, first of all, how long has CATS been in existence?
We will be here 2 years, March 15th.
Okay. And is this modeled after something similar somewhere else, or did you create this program for Wausau?
Well, to be honest, this is really the first type of such a shelter in the state of Wisconsin. It's very unique as it is private. It is a private shelter. It is unique that we will serve youth 24/7. If they need admission, we take admissions any time of day, any time of night, any day of the week. It is modeled after our regulations, which is Department of Children and Families through the state of Wisconsin. So the basic structure is based off our regulations, but then as a shelter and as a director, I work to design the program based on the type of services we're seeing. Our services have changed 100-fold as when we first opened to where they are today, because we see the need increasing. We see the crisis and the trauma and the abuse increasing. And so our services have taken on much higher and more intense level.
Tell us the story of how it began, Kathy. How did this develop?
Well, this program really was a dream of the Freeman family. They were doctors in the Wausau community and saw a lot of abuse while working with their patients, saw a lot of abuse. They would see and were familiar that trafficking in the larger cities was becoming an issue, and that anticipated that it would be moving into other areas and communities. Homelessness, runaways, crises in the home. Because of the complexity of families and the availability of resources, which is very minimal for youth, they anticipated there would be a strong need for a facility like ours. So Mary Jo, our president, put that dream to reality, started back in 2019, purchased the home, and then had been fundraising for years. And then in 2020, I came on, set up the program, and opened our doors 2 months later.
Okay. You know, we use the term trafficking, and I'm not sure we always know what that means. Can you how do you define trafficking?
Trafficking, there's many different ways an individual could be trafficked, but really what it is, it's a gain for a service, whether that be, for example, a youth having a place to sleep in exchange may be delivering drugs, handling drug transactions, in order to get food, maybe providing sexual behaviors. So anytime an individual is asked to perform services for a gain, a necessary gain, a need, that could be defined as trafficking.
Sure. And lest we question, you know, the moral fortitude of these young people. I mean, these are kids who are like desperate to get they need a place to stay. They need basic necessities. And so they are basically being conned, in a way, forced into doing this. Yeah.
The proper word for that is called grooming.
Yeah.
So their trafficker will begin to groom them, and then eventually it leads to that service. So, you know, I know you don't have a place to live. You don't have anybody who cares about you. I care about you. So here's what I'm going to do. It can happen within a few days, or it can take months, but they call that grooming.
Sure, sure. I'm sure every young person who shows up at your door is distinct in terms of their situation. But can you just give us an example of one of the young people, or just maybe a common scenario that's part of the people that you serve?
Okay, so right now we serve age 12 to 17. 90% of the youth that do come into our facility have mental health or substance issues. 86% have been trafficked in one way or another. We serve both male and female, and we see all those numbers pretty even between the two genders. About 95% of the youth who do come into our shelter also have parents with untreated substance and mental health and are homeless. So as we can see, it's a lot of the consequences of homelessness, what that is, but it's generation after generation. So our goal here is to stop that, to provide the resources, show them what life should look like for a 16-year-old or 12-year-old, and give them the resources to ensure they stay on that path.
How do they find you, Kathy?
Well, we're the teachers, police officers, going into the local hospital, going into a clinic, going to the Salvation Army, calling the women's community. But, you know, if they're in school, all the schools know about us. We can be found on the website.
Yeah.
Our posters are up at most gas stations, up at the emergency rooms, at the bus station. We try to target the areas that the youth are known to frequent and get those out. Going to churches and saying, here's what's happening to me, because a lot of the churches that we work with are familiar.
Sure.
And we provide materials to them. So, and they can show up here too. They can easily show up here. If they, most of them have Wi-Fi services, their phone may not have service, but they can go to the library or Starbucks, get on Wi-Fi and just search for homeless shelter, and we come up right away.
Sure.
Or just call us. Well, I'm down in Weston and I have nowhere to go tonight. We will send a cab. We have an agreement with the cab company to pick them up and bring them here, because we know the bus service doesn't run. Sometimes the kids don't have a way to get here because they don't have a bus ticket. So we will provide them the opportunity to come here.
Sure. And so they can stay with you for 20 days, correct?
They can stay with us for 20 days. And then if we can get a court order, because there is no place for this youth to go, or the services are needed longer, we can get a court order through the county for that youth to stay here for a minimal of 60 days.
Okay. Okay. And then what happens after they leave? Do you have some sense of, how do they integrate, or what happens once they leave CATS?
So we leave the lines of communication open. They can call us anytime. We follow up with them. The schools, if they notice, let's say the youth is beginning to fall off with school again, or they're struggling in school, they will call us and let us know, keeping us informed. Their counselors, North Central Healthcare, will keep us updated as well. So we really try to stay informed of what's happening with each youth. Some of them do, they drop off what we call the radar, and then all of a sudden you get a call, or they call and say, share some great news, or you'll see they'll show up at one of our events. I would say that the biggest success we have with youth is when they're ready for services and are willing to put effort into making those changes with our support.
And you've seen some of those?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I'm sure that's immensely gratifying, right? I mean, that's what makes it all worthwhile, because I'm sure there are also some real frustrating and sad developments that transpire.
Yeah, the toughest part is really, and I tell my staff this all the time, if we're working harder than the resident is, we got to reevaluate, because if we're doing all the work when they leave here, what has the resident learned, right?
Right.
And so sometimes we have to have those hard discussions. Sometimes we have to make those hard choices to say, you're not ready. When you are, come back. But right now, what are you doing to help yourself? It's all in front of you. It's here. It's all right in front of you, but you're not making use of it. And those are tough times, right?
Right.
I am a firm believer that God talks to all of us in different ways. And my philosophy, he says, yes, no, or wait. And I think sometimes with the kids, they are waiting, and they're waiting for that divine intervention, right? And it may not, like I said, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but they come back.
Yeah. You know, I think there are so many programs such as what you're describing that work with adults dealing with those same challenges. But these are 12 to 17-year-olds. And boy, for them to even find the resolve to do what you're asking them to do is really quite extraordinary.
Yeah. And I
Kids at
think
that age.
that's one thing, if anything, about my messages to people is that, you know, I read an article about different agencies getting funding to help with all these adults, right? Homeless adults, the adult population is so huge. But when we get kids in who have parents who are homeless, where is the funding for these kids?
Yeah.
You know, where is the funding for substance treatment for our kids and mental health treatment? There isn't right now. We are the only shelter of this kind to serve kids in northern Wisconsin. And we do it all through donations and grants. We aren't getting that funding. And if we did, we could expand, and because we are outgrowing this building, because the need is so great. And so I think, like you said, our adults are 12, 13, 14 right now. And our goal is to not make them a statistic, keep them out of the justice system, keep them on track. And so really, I think there needs to be a major push towards, you know, yes, education is huge. I get that. But also turning the lives around of these kids and not just letting them kind of hang out in the justice, in the community and in the system. Serve them all the way. And we need a lot more of that. We need a lot more juvenile services in this community.
Or in the state or in the nation.
In the state, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
You mentioned your building. It's a house. Is the location publicized, or is that kind of left to people who refer?
We do have a sign on our garage. It's a pretty big sign. It doesn't look like a shelter. It doesn't look like a commercial building.
Home. It's a home.
It's a home, and that's what we want. We don't, like, we just were very fortunate to get a van. We've been wanting a van, and someone donated funds to do that. And I thought about putting our name on the van, but then again, a lot of times we have youth who are at high risk. Do I want to put them at risk because now someone knows they're staying with us? So we try to be as discreet as possible. It's a fine line, like letting kids know we're here, but yet trying to keep safety in line with that. So
right. The house is on a path that I walk quite regularly when it's not winter and I'm walking. And I mean, I walked by it for almost the 2 years you've been in existence and didn't even know it was there.
right.
Which I think just it's not meant to stand apart in the neighborhood. It's meant to be part of the neighborhood. I think it says on the website there's a church in the neighborhood, and a park, and we actually have some parishioners who live 2 doors away, and they say that cats are great. It's a great neighbor to have. So that speaks really well of
That's great.
Your residents and your program too. Kathy, what would you say? I think when we're dealing with programs such as this and people who we kind of identify as being on the fringe, or I'm not sure if I want to use that term, but they're often misunderstanding. Is there kind of what's the greatest misunderstanding of the kids that you're serving?
The biggest
that people like myself might have on the outside.
The biggest understanding is mental illness, drug abuse, homelessness, trafficking does not discriminate. It does not discriminate. We've had kids who've had major conflict in the home, and it had nothing to do with income level. It had nothing to do with lack of education. So I think we need to open our eyes that we can all fall. We can all fall off path, no matter how least amount of money we make or how much big money we make, right?
Sure.
We could have all the supports in the world and still fall off track. So we have to be open to every youth, no matter who they are, what their background is, and realize that the work we do is because they need us, that they deserve a chance to be a kid. They deserve a chance to live a life that is rewarding for them.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, to me, that's the biggest misunderstanding, is that most of our residents here come from very bad backgrounds, low income, single parents, no parents. That's not always the case.
Well, what I appreciated was when our first introduction here at St. Anne to cats came from one of the young people in our parish, Carson Rice, who
Yes.
initiated this campaign as part of an Eagle Scout project. But I appreciate that it came from a peer of the kids you're serving. I mean,
Yes.
I think it's important that he knew about it. You know, he probably learned about it at school or something like that. But it also creates a gratitude, you know, of how fortunate someone is to be in a more stable family environment, but
Mhm.
attentive to those who don't. I just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Kathy, what's your story, and how did this become part of your story?
So my story is rather interesting. Most people would never guess this, but I came from a very broken family. Suicide, alcohol, abandonment, and really was very fortunate to have a gentleman come into my life when I was 13, took on 7 kids, and brought God into my life and our lives, and role modeled what life should be like.
Hmm.
And then once I got older, the trauma from my early years and things like that set in, and suffered a lot of depression. And there was always the anxiety of people finding out, and kind of like the dignity and I would like the self-esteem, how it affected me if people really knew what I was about. So for many years, I didn't deal with it. And I saw what it did to relationships and things like that. And then I had been in counseling, and I do share my story with organizations, but I sought out treatment after a while, because medication to me was masking the healing. It wasn't healing me. So I began treatment, and then there were opportunities for me to work in the industry. And so I felt that I could bring a lot to an organization, because I learned to accept my mental health, and I learned that there's no shame in it. And so I wanted to be able to work with individuals, to bring the resources to them to understand. So I went to work for North Central Healthcare, worked with adults with mental illness, ran a substance treatment program, and worked in the crisis center. I was the manager of those 3. I saw a lot. And one thing I noticed was, the longer I was with North Central Healthcare, that my population of adults was getting younger and younger. When I first started, I was seeing that 35 and older in substance treatment. When I left there, I saw 18, 19-year-olds with very, very severe addiction, very, very severe mental health, who were not, when they were in their late teens, were working their way out of the youth programs.
Hey, Kathy, we're gonna need.
I'm on a call.
I have one black card.
I'm on a call, and so that they oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so what I noticed, it was getting younger and younger and more severe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I began to spend more time with the youth in the crisis center and realized they're aging out of the youth system for social services, but they're not old enough to be into the adult system. So that's when I started talking, Mary Jo, and I started talking. I wasn't really sure if I had it really in me to set up an entire program. It was a whole new world for me. But I truly believe I was being called to do this. There were many signs that you need to do this. And so, you know, I prayed very, very hard, and it just led me to this program. And here I am 2 years in, and you know, and I know during the toughest times and some of the toughest struggles, you know, I listen to my Christian radio every morning, and I'm like, these songs just pump me up, and participating in my church as well, that there's always seems to be something in a message, either in a song or in a sermon, or just my involvement in my faith that keeps telling me this is where I'm supposed to be. So
wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for sharing that. Well, and thank you for listening to respond to what God is asking of you. We'll be gathering items for CATS every few months. But are there other ways in which parishioners who might be interested can be of assistance to the program?
they can call me. They can email me. Right now, we're really busy with kids. I always say, if you want to see what the house looks like, stop by. But right now, we're pretty much at capacity, and it's very busy. But there are times that the kids are at school or out on an outing that I can arrange for a tour, because it's really where it hits home is on what we're doing is when you enter the home.
Sure.
You know, the family style meals, you know, that to me was one thing I had to look forward to, was sitting down at that family meal with all of us to know that we were safe and we were together. And so I brought that into the shelter because that was one fond memory for me. And so we really do that. We do a lot of things with the kids. And it's just, people need to see it and to really know what the impact we're making.
Right. Well, to that meal, I suspect that a lot of the kids who sit down at that table to share that meal have never done that before.
No, and even eating healthy sometimes. Or it was interesting, we had a young female here who never ate off a glass plate. She had only eaten, and this kid was 16 years old. And so those are the types of things that we take so much for granted.
Sure.
And now they get to experience that. And this is normal. This is what normal is. This is what you want to work for when you have a family. Look how important this time is. And so we really want to try and model that here at the shelter.
But also, Kathy, that girl trusted you to be able to make that observation.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, yeah. That is huge here. The trust. Yep.
And to say that, wow. Thank you. Hey, thank you for what you do there. And is it okay if I conclude with a prayer?
Absolutely.
And I know you have a call you need to get to, so.
Yeah, believe me, it's always something here. Everybody, I've got such a great team, but sometimes we all need to pull together to get something done. So
sure. Let us pray. Loving God, we ask your blessing upon Kathy and all those who assist her in the important work they do. And guide others to be open to the call, to be attentive to those in our community who are struggling, who are desperate, who need attention and care and love. Bless the kids who gather at the table tonight and encourage them to find their way in a positive and constructive way, and help us to be attentive and responsive to the needs and to be generous in our response as best we can. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Kathy, thank you very much.
You're welcome.